This is Neurological Development Episode 2.
Evacuating chamber!
Unit reloading. Particular targets acquired. Engaging with non-lethal force. Maintaining. Unlawful citizens spotted.
I'll be right there!
Reloading. We are authorized to move forward. Unlawful citizens acquired. Activate defense mode.
Another dead shepherd!
Possible hostile contacts.
Better luck this time!
Hey, JD, let's get inside before more DBs show up.
Can always use more.
Fast forward a little bit.
Unit reloading. Comply with our reasonable request. Potential hostile target spotted. Relocating.
Bot destroyed!
Comply with our reasonable requests.
That's the last one!
Nice work, young ones. Now let's steal that goddamn fabricator.
So that was Neurological Development Episode 2. I did skip ahead. I was walking around a little bit, but sometimes you got to figure things out. It's a maze, it's a puzzle, and it's not too easy to get lost in this game. I know other games it's easy to get lost, and sometimes there are glitches, and sometimes the game malfunctions. But this game is pretty cool. Never given me problems, and this as you can see, I didn't do too bad. I guess these are machines I'm going against. I've gone against aliens. I think Battlefield 6 is a good game. I'm gonna get that later. As I mentioned, my Xbox is so old it won't play that game. But it gives you a real live, well, more realistic version of combating enemy personnel, enemy soldiers. In actual like war tactics and techniques and methods. So, it's more like wartime scenarios and situations that where, throwing grenades or, things like that. So older games are like Medal of Honor, Battlefield 6, pretty cool. It's it does damage to buildings, so it's realistic. And, communicating with your teammates and your fellow brothers and, comrades out there, being able to network and also build a friendship and brotherhood, just virtually. And maybe meeting up on the outside or social media and starting a network, or something like that to where, for me, about recovery, a lot of other people might, be playing these games while they're doing drugs or whatever. But for me, it's just a way to kind of get some awareness out there. If anyone is having trouble wherever they are in life, just hopefully give them advice to stay clean and do right and do better. Maybe lay off the video games a little bit if they're on there too much. But I've got my Discord channel. I'm joining other Discord channels to where, I'm joining NA groups. So that's another thing that I'll mention. You could go to You can join virtual AA groups or virtual NA groups nationally. And the NA groups I attend are 24/7, 24/7. I donated to the last one. I enjoyed it. I wanted to help them out. And so I normally don't, and you don't have to, but I donated and I thought it was just going to be a memorable experience. So, I plan on going to many, many more NA meetings to help others and bring awareness. And I know I'm not supposed to solicit, but this is what my channel is for. And if we ever meet up later on the outside, like I said, here's my Discord channel, here's my X social media, here's my website. Check it out if you're ever feeling like using or feeling depressed or anxious, or if you need someone to talk to or need someone to listen to, right? Because all my stuff is just me speaking from my experience, what I've been through, how to get clean and stay sober and try to live the American dream. Try to live at least a good quality life as best you can, and survive. Really, it's about surviving, right? Because the fentanyl epidemic and a lot of people dying, overdosing out there, it's very easy to overdose and die. You get addicted, you do too much, and even if it's not laced, you can still die. But especially the fact that a lot of drugs are laced these days, it's easy to die without you even knowing, without anyone knowing, and then the drug dealer gets away with it. They just don't leave a trace, and the cops don't arrest them. They don't have enough evidence, or for whatever reason, the DA doesn't prosecute, and they can't prove intent. They can't find the drug dealer. They don't. So these, you don't want to be a victim, and don't put yourself in that situation. I'm not gonna jump in front of a bus. I'm not gonna jump out of a plane without a parachute. I'm not gonna hurt myself in any stupid way. So doing drugs, that's kind of like slitting your wrist or something. If you're gonna hurt yourself, doing drugs is equivalent to cutting yourself, because you're destroying brain cells, you're destroying your organs from the inside out. See, when you cut yourself, that's on the outside, that's mutilation. Doing drugs is hurting yourself on the inside, especially depending on the drugs you do. LSD, PCP, meth, cocaine, whatever, weed. I don't, a lot of these things, like weed suffocates brain cells. I think it suffocates brain cells. Meth and all that messes up your limbic system or endocrine system. It can actually do damage to your pituitary gland, shrink it, I think, and certain parts of your brain, to where you're never the same, and your emotions are never the same, and your personality is never the same as it used to be. So the person you were meant to be and designed to be with your DNA, the blueprint of your DNA, the way you were born, changes, and you can never be the same again. Sometimes there's real damage. Sometimes there's memory or neurological damage, and so don't put yourself in that situation. Just like if you're not dumb enough to drink Drano or drink antifreeze, and do something stupid like that, or drink Lysol, don't do drugs. If you're not dumb enough to jump in front of a bus or jump in front of a car like a little squirrel or a little dog, you're a human being, you have intelligence, you have common sense. You're not going to jump off a building. You're going to not do drugs either. Don't do drugs either, because that's pretty much a chemical equivalent. You're chemically destroying yourself, and you're risking death. You're risking death every time you use. Every time you pick up the crack pipe or do a line of meth or anything, you don't know what's in it. You didn't test it. You don't know if there's fentanyl or nitazines or xylazine or whatever the hell else they put in it, rat poison or cyanide or insecticide or anything. They can put crap into these days, you know? So don't take that risk. Don't trust people with your life that you just you haven't gone to war with, or you haven't grown up with since you were a baby. Like these people who offering you drugs, if you really trusted them with your life, they wouldn't be offering you drugs. They would be offering to take you to the gym, to get a personal trainer, to see a doctor, see a therapist, get help, go to rehab, get clean, eat right, go on a diet. They would motivate you to find a good job, get educated, to go to college. I've had mentors advise me and mentor me to go to college, to get an accounting degree. Go back to college, just 2 years. Learn principles of accounting and intermediate accounting. That's all you got to do. You can take them online, courses online. So like people like that motivate you and push you to excel, get better. Those are your friends who want you to do better. Those are the people rooting for you. The people that want you to stay on the bottom and who want to see your downfall are the people offering you drugs. Those people are bringing you down. Those people don't want to see you succeed. Because how are you going to succeed if you're all messed up on drugs all the time, spending all your money, just deteriorating from the inside out? Those people know what they're doing. Those people know you're not going to be the next, Tupac or Slim Shady or whatever, or Beyonce or Taylor Swift. If you're doing all these drugs, you might have dreams and fantasies of being a pop singer or whatever on MTV and all that, or the radio and having all these concerts, but you're messed up, you're tripping, your lyrics aren't good, you can't hire a ghostwriter because you spent all your money on drugs, you can't afford studio time and you can't really even get there. And if you do make it, if you don't get in a car accident on the way there, then your lyrics are all messed up, your speech is slurred, and your lyrics aren't very good. So you don't it's difficult to make it to that level when you're all messed up on drugs. Successful singers, sometimes they do drugs later after they've already become successful, but I don't know, the rappers that make it on drugs and coming up selling drugs and selling crack and doing drugs, you know they get lucky and they get ghostwriters, and they get clean. They eventually get clean. They don't continue using. People are going to find out. The FBI is going to catch them. They're going to go to jail. They're going to go to prison. It's not worth the risk. They still pay their taxes. They still have to pay their taxes. They still got bills to pay. They still have to make all their music videos, and they can't. That's a job for them. They can't be going to work high and stoned and drunk. You know. So stay clean, if you want to make it in anything. If you want to be a singer, that's great. I've seen singers make it just on YouTube. They're not very super famous, but they have a following and they have, subscribers, and they get money, and they're able to make a living singing, doing what they want, doing covers, and making their own music and, selling music. And they have Spotify and they put it on, Apple Music and all that. So anyone can be a singer these days. You just have to, build that audience and following. But if you're gonna be a singer or rapper or whatever, it's best to do it clean, have clean lyrics. You might not get the biggest audience, but it's respectable, it's noble. For men, like if you want to be a knight in shining armor, you're not gonna be this gangster, wanting to, kill cops type of knight in shining armor. You're gonna be wanting to like, rescue a damsel in distress from predators out there, or criminals, or robbers, or thieves, or corrupt cops. You have to battle them out in court. You battle them out in court. But gangsters do all this crazy stuff. They hate the law, they hate authorities, they hate anyone in the government. Pretty much they just want to make it, and it's hard. They have a lot of hatred. But a knight in shining armor, you're rescuing the damsel in distress, taking her to a good life, getting her out of all the bullshit that she's in, surrounded by predators, surrounded by drugs, surrounded by all this nonsense, and people filling her head with garbage. And so there's a lot of ways to rescue a damsel in distress, right? So obviously in real life, it's actually being a protector, a guardian angel, and a survivor, right? You can't help anyone if you're not alive, if you're not surviving. So being a protector in all sorts of ways, financial, physical, emotional, spiritual, psychological, and those are some of the main ways to be a protector, right? So, for instance, there are widows out there. There's widows out there, and some, for whatever happens, they lose their husband, however, in a accident, or natural cause or whatever. Now they have kids. It's hard for them to support the family, and they're struggling with their job, and being able to support them, take care of them. You love them. You being a stepfather, taking care of the kids. That's like rescuing a family and rescuing a damsel in distress. That's just one another concept, a way to think about it, perception, and perspective, or point of view. So you know um there's probably millions of different ways to really help people, by giving and being able to protect and provide. So you know just think about that. Sometimes it's knowledge, sometimes it's emotion, sometimes even people feel lost in this world. A lot of addicts feel lost, they don't really, maybe they lost their parents, or they lost one of their parents, or they lost a family member and they're depressed, or they don't have the guidance, or maybe their parents don't have a master's degree, or, and so they're not the most highly educated. So it's hard for them to focus on the education and go to college, and they try to, just get a job they can land and make some good money. And it's hard for them to figure out life and being able to afford an American dream. But you have to keep pursuing higher education, keep pursuing a trade, certificates, getting certificates to learn something new and get higher pay so you can live a better life, eat well, and pay your bills and taxes for a nicer house or a nicer apartment, luxury apartment or whatever, a nicer community, and you're able to afford to take care of a cat or a dog, and try to live the best you can to the best of your abilities, as happy as you can, as you know best quality life, you know and that's all you can ask. Longevity, living as long as possible, as healthy as possible, so when you're older you don't have problems. You're not going to fall down and break your hip. You have your balance, you have your strength, you have endurance, you have stamina, and you know so stay strong, stay strong out there. Be wise. Focus on education. Focus on certificates. Live in the American dream. Get some neurological development. You know, maybe invest in a PlayStation 5 one day if you can afford it. Get those network with people out there. Your networking groups. Network on these video games and the internet and Discord and NA groups. NA.org. So I go for virtual meetings. AA also has an app out there, AA groups. You could do that virtually as well, I believe. There's an app called Everything AA. Download that. So I hope this information was useful. I know I go off sometimes and I try to make the most sense possible, but hopefully this did make sense. And that's all for now. Take it easy. Stay tuned for the next video.